Thank you. DSS Investigations has been in business in Utah since 1993. We were an agency in California prior to that. So we've got some 20 plus years involved in the PI business, helping attorneys, businesses, and individuals prevail.
Okay, so now the cat's out of the bag. You're a private investigator, and we're here to talk about what a private investigator can do in a nutshell for people in divorce and child custody situations. So what I thought would be useful is, if I met with Bill over lunch before we sat down, he could probably regale us with stories for days at a time if we asked him to. But just to give you a taste of what private investigators do and how they can specifically help people in domestic relations settings, I've asked Bill to give us a couple of examples of what he's actually done for some real clients, which he will not identify by name, of course, but it'll give you an idea of how he can help and what he does to help, and a little bit about why a private investigator can do things that private citizens cannot, either because it's illegal or because they just don't have access to the same tools. All right?
All righty.
Where do you want to start?
Well, we'll start with the law. The law in Utah is that a private investigator essentially has the same powers as law enforcement, but we have no arrest authority. So as far as investigative rights, we have the right to public records and even not so public records that we get through legal requests. So we have access to records that the public normally would not have access to.
Or access that you can get immediately without having to go through a lot of subpoenas, motions, getting judges to approve or disapprove or things like that. You just get access straight to it.
Correct.
Saves you a lot of time, saves you a lot of money.
Correct. And unlike a private citizen who's conducting an investigation, spying on people, we're exempt from the stalking laws. If you were to go out and start staking out someone's house and it was discovered and it was over a period of time, there are laws against that, but it is part of our profession and what the legislature has granted us the right to do. In divorce cases, there are many things that a private investigator can do. We can start with the traditional cheating spouse. We don't do anything like the on TV cheating spouse. That's all acting and over amplified. What we do is, if someone suspects their better half of being either unfaithful or committing adultery, we can investigate that and either prove or disprove their suspicions. That information, generally speaking, has limited value, even though the courts have recently been authorized to use it in considering alimony and support. We can also help in child custody matters. Give you an example. We had a divorce case where the wife moved to Utah and didn't tell her spouse about it, and she took the family child. No divorce, no child custody. And so the father wanted us to check on the welfare of his son. When we checked into it, she had a boyfriend here in Utah who was in prison for armed robbery, and he was a member of MS-13, which is probably the most vicious gang within the United States. And she was running with MS-13 people, and we documented all that. And we made arrangements by finding out where she worked and what her shift was and where the child was while she was at work, for the father to fly to Utah, claim his son, and take him back to the state of origin where he filed for divorce and got custody of the child. Other cases, we, by use of investigative techniques, i.e. GPS tracker, found a father who the mother was suspicious of him cheating, and we followed him. We used GPS.
So she thought, all right, I think my spouse might be cheating on me, and so if I'm going to get a divorce, I'd like to have some dirt on him, so to speak, so the court understands what my reasoning might be, or so that he can't take advantage.
Correct.
So you start following him around to see
Right.
if he's cheating on his wife. What were some of the things that led her to believe this?
Well, he would go out late at night and not return till the next morning. He was neglecting his job. He would be missing from the job in the afternoons. Just general unaccounted for time.
Sounds reasonable to suspect
Right.
that, all right.
So we followed him via GPS and saw what we thought was an unusual pattern, and did some more investigation and determined that he was running drugs for a drug gang out of Ogden.
So he wasn't cheating on his wife, he was just dealing drugs.
He was dealing drugs. And so we alerted the local police. They investigated it and busted the father of the child and the drug ring. And it ended up he went to prison and she got custody of the child. We had another case where the father was concerned about the welfare of the child. He got the child every other weekend. They would buy the child clothes, and the following visitation, the child had no clothes. And we started investigating the mother and found that she was related to members of the Kearns Boys, which is a very violent gang. Two of her uncles were in prison for murder. And using pretext investigation, we were able to visit her in her apartment. No furniture, no bed for the boys to sleep on. He had a pillow and a blanket. And the aunt, whose husband was in jail for murder, watched the child frequently. With this evidence, the father was able to go back to court, prove that the mother was not a fit person for this child, and he got custody. So there are many cases we can do.
And let me ask you, pretext investigation, tell them what that means.
We use some false information, i.e. we're serving a phony subpoena, or we're a building inspector, or we're something else, other than we never claim that we're law enforcement. That's illegal. But we'll pretext and say the landlord sent us by to do an inspection, we're doing all the apartments, and those type things. Anything that gets us entry or gets the person we're dealing with to accept us more readily.
Let me ask you a quick question. Can I put a hidden camera outside of somebody's house and just to watch and see if my spouse is going to some rendezvous with a paramour or a lover? Can I do that? Is that legal for me to do?
You can do it for a very short period of time, sit in your car, but if you're going to place a permanent camera on someone's home and observe their lifestyle, that's electronic stalking.
Right.
And that's illegal.
But it's illegal if I do it, but
Correct.
if an investigator does it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you can see that I know that many of you who think that it might be worthwhile to get a private investigator might say, well, yeah, but I don't know if I can afford it. So in the remaining minutes we have, you can see all the different things, as Bill pointed out. They have powers and legal protections that allow them to do things that you couldn't do, or if you tried to do them, might expose you to civil and criminal liability of your own. But, and by the way, it's going to cost you some money to get quality, but people might be surprised how little it does cost for certain things. Could you give us an idea, those stories that you gave us of some of those things you've done, what kind of the price range you're talking about for certain services?
Of course, it depends on the amount of time involved. Now, all investigators are not created equal. You will want to study the investigator that you're interviewing very carefully. What is their background? What knowledge do they have? Do they have good references? And providing they are qualified, you should shop around because the prices are going to vary.
Yeah, you were telling me before we went on camera that you can have the same service provided with a range between maybe a few $100s to a few $1,000s for the same service at the same quality. And you'll often find, and correct me if I'm wrong, these private investigators are preying on your ignorance. You've never hired a private investigator before. You probably never will again. And they know that, so a lot of them can simply tell you, well, this is difficult to get, and they can charge you far more than the market really ought to charge.
Absolutely. The range for a private investigator is between $35 to $100 an hour. We'll take a investigator who alleges that they physically surveil and don't use GPS. They can be $3,000 to $4,000 for a infidelity or adultery case. We generally charge $1,200 to $1,400 because we use the GPS, so we don't need as much manpower to do it.
Right. In a situation that allows itself, you're not saying you won't send 2 cars after somebody if that's what's required, but you're not looking to gouge somebody.
No, no.
And there's a lot of people out there that would, so do shop around. I would like to know if it'd be all right with you if we could come and talk again sometime about some of the specific things like alimony, the cheating spouse, parental unfitness, hiding of assets, and other things like that. But for now, I think you've given us a great overview. So before we finish, would you just please give them, again, your name, the name of your agency, and your contact information, which we will also put up at the end of this video. So if you want to jot this down and give Bill and his agency a call, you can.
Right, it's Bill McGregor, and our company name is DSS Investigations. Our office phone number is 801-975-2653, or you can email us at info.dssinvestigations.com.
So info@dssinvestigations.com.
Correct.
Excellent. And what's the website? DSSinvestigations.com?
dssinvestigations.com. We'll get you there.
Well, I really enjoyed speaking with Bill before we went on camera, and I hope you found this as enlightening as it was for me, and I hope to see you back soon.
I hope to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.